He's dead, honey, because Mommy killed him.
Goddamn force of nature.
I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
You see, Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
Hey, what's going on? My name is Jonjo Lyons, and I like to think of my life in two different phases. Before I watched Cradle of Fear, and after I watched Cradle of Fear. Between sacrifices, I wanted to spread the good word and maybe inform those without the sacred knowledge that Cradle of Fear is probably the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Nothing will ever be the same again. Written and directed by Alex Chandon, Cradle of Fear stars Danny Filth, Emily Booth and Rebecca Eden, among many others. Cradle of Fear is an anthology that tells 4 stories, all linked by an unspeakable need of an incarcerated child killer to wreak vengeance on those responsible for his imprisonment, helped by the man played by Danny Filth, who leaves a trail of death in his crimson wake. The cannibal convict forces 2 goth vamps to endure a one-night stand from hell, 2 tough female robbers to see through each other, an obscenely rich cokehead to chop up more than a few lines, and an internet surfer to descend into madness, where he uncovers the ultimate in web depravity. You're absolutely not ready. Starring the lead singer of Cradle of Filth, this movie gained mythic status for me by being touted as the most extreme horror movie made by the most extreme band, and being so hard to find. 18 years later, I randomly stumbled upon it, and it was so worth the wait. So join me as we delve into the depths that is Cradle of Fear. The movie begins with us following the man as he walks down an alley where he shadow strangles a homeless person and makes them throw up. Like, actually throw up. Off to a good start. A couple of mad lads decide to attack the man for no discernible reason. This sound effect is used. The sound design of this movie is one of the many things that I simply adore. And all seems to be going well until this happens. And it was at that moment that I realised I was going to love this movie. The man roars into the sky and we cut to a very The Crow looking shot, then to the opening credits where images of a dead woman are shown. Cut to a bedroom containing a couple of dead women as forensics are taking pictures of the scene. That's when we're blessed with the presence of Inspector Nielsen. He tells the photographer that's enough and takes a closer look at the woman on the bed. Then, after clearly seeing she's been ripped open, he checks her pulse, then super casually rests his hand on her breast and gives it a little squeeze. Okay. The photographer sees this and quite rightly asks his colleague what the f*** is going on, and his response made me laugh until I literally couldn't breathe.
What's he doing? It's just his way.
It's so nonchalant. It's just his way. And the shush at the end, you know, good lord. That's literally my favourite line delivery in cinema history. I swear to God. Inspector Nielsen lets go of the dead woman's breast. And we dissolve to the same girl, but when she was considerably less dead. She's staring at the man from across the club for an uncomfortably long time when she's joined by a friend and they go off to do coke in the toilets. Inside, they talk about the guys in the club, and the main girl says she's found her man.
I didn't know Sutton was coming.
Yeah, well, he is.
All over mine.
Then they head back into the club where they see the man awkwardly still standing in exactly the same position. Cut to the main girl as she brings the man home. They start to get busy when things take a turn for the worst and the man starts to turn into a monster. We cut to the girl getting in the shower and breaking down in a scene which feels like it goes on forever and ends with her bleeding and then throwing up. Cut to the girl walking down the street trying to light a cigarette. A man stops and lights it for her before saying,
"We must look after you, mustn't we?
What did you say?
Now that you're one of us."
Then a creepy kid says,
Mummy says that you're going to have my little brother. Can I come and see him?
Natalie, what are you
doing? I told you not to tell anybody.
Then the girl runs and starts to trip out, seeing monsters in the crowd all around her. Now, with the monsters that she's seeing, the makeup effects that they're using and the masks or whatever, they all look really, really good for the brief moments that you see them. But there's one guy who doesn't have a mask. He's just smiling, and he's got a super creepy smile. And I just love the idea that he went to the director on the day of shooting, and he's looking at all these other masks, and he's like, oh man, yeah, that's a cool mask, bro. Like, oh, that's sick as well. You look super scary. Hey, Alex, where's mine? And Alex is like, oh, like, you know, like, you've got a natural ability to look terrifying. That's got to be detrimental to your self-esteem, you know? This ends when she's confronted by a bloke with a vagina in his face who tells her she needs to trust the man.
Trust him.
Cut to the friend's house where she opens the front door to find the main girl distraught and delivers another sensational line reading that I genuinely adore. Cut to them on the sofa as the main girl talks about what she's been seeing. They start drinking, and then we cut to the same street scene, but now with a blue filter slapped over it. Dream sequence? Cut to the main girl waking up in bed. She wakes up her friend complaining of stomach pains, and so the friend rubs her belly. Her hand starts to get lower, and it kind of looks like it's about to turn into something else when gets rowdy. Whatever's inside the main girl bites off some of the friend's fingers and pushes its leg tentacles out of her stomach as she responds with absolutely zero f***s given. I've literally never seen something so savage. She goes ham. She just like, nah, not me, my G. No. The only word that I can use to describe such an action is dedication. The main girl dies from this. Spoilers. And the creature inside of her tears itself out, revealing its mutant form. Go on, give Auntie Nikki a kiss. Yo, shit! The baby eats Nikki, and we cut to Inspector Nielsen at the station. He complains at his team for getting nowhere on the case before he's called into the chief inspector's office. Nielsen complains about the new computers they're working with being a load of old
But that new computer system's a load of old
which is just quality screenwriting. Just. And the chief brings up the squeezing of the murder victim's breast incident. Nielsen explains he was just checking to see if she was dead, and then we have this wonderful exchange.
Just something I have to do.
Okay. Nielsen explains he's been doing this since Abigail Watson, the fourth victim of serial killer Kemper. Nielsen found her and thought she was dead. He reasons that if he'd touched her, he would have known she was still alive and could have saved her. Sad story and all, but I don't think that clears you on the old... Cut to the local asylum where we meet Kemper as he sits in his cell looking like Michael Myers circa Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. He pulls a screw out of his bed frame and cuts his finger, drawing blood, rubs that blood on a devil coin of some nature, then retrieves a plastic bag from underneath the toilet. Inside is an envelope in which Kemper places the coin and seals shut before placing it on a fish hook which carries it away. Sure. I mean, at this point, why the f*** not? Cut to outside a house and then inside where we see the man opening the envelope. He opens it up and the paper inside reveals the coin and an address. We dissolve to the man now standing outside that address to find two women leaving. The women discuss their plan to steal money from a neighbour as the man appears behind them watching. They get to the house and break inside, finding it empty. One of the women scares the other by pushing her over.
What the f*** you doing?
Your face.
You won't have a f***ing face if you do that again.
Shush, the neighbours might hear.
Perhaps a subtle and nuanced display of foreshadowing. They take forever to find the money, when suddenly the old man jumps up from under the sheet and grabs the blonde-haired girl. Black Hair responds to this by grabbing a candlestick holder and bludgeoning him to death with it. She f***s him up, it's deep. After the man goes down, they briefly show regret of killing him before turning their attention back to their ill-gotten gains, when again the man springs to life and attacks. The blonde then stabs him in the face and chest a couple times before he falls. I'm wondering how they did that knife effect as well through his face. Like, I don't know if that guy's like a circus performer and he's like done shit like that before, I don't know, but that was dope. The women catch their breath when he comes back to life again, and Black Hair is like, "F this bullshit," and starts beating him over the head with a bit of wood until he's actually fully, properly, for super serious now, dead out. Cut to the women in the bath washing off the blood, in the flat where they just killed the guy, in that guy's bath, discussing how they're going to cover this up as the blonde worries about them getting caught. Black Hair questions her on whether she told anyone, and Blonde confesses she did tell her sister. Black Hair then asks the blonde if the sister knew that she was involved too, and Blonde says she did not. Black Hair then gets out of the bath with an ominous facial expression. They start to get dressed when Black Hair smashes Blonde's face in out of nowhere. See? Good storytelling. It all rhymes.
Yeah, it's like poetry, sort of, they rhyme.
Then stuffs her pockets with the cash and goes to get the hell out of there, but trips, hitting her head and knocking herself out. Waking up in the morning, she stumbles out of the house and runs home. In her kitchen, she starts to get undressed again before looking at the cash, which really doesn't look like murder a stranger and your best friend money, but hey B, you do you. It's a struggle out here, I get it. She pours herself a drink and backs it when Blonde Hair appears, strangely looking less mash up than she was the last time we saw her.
Where's my shit?
Black Hair freaks out and tries to escape, but is grabbed by the old man. Blonde Hair stabs her in the face with a broken bottle, and then we pan down for a gratuitous shot of boobs covered in blood. Boobs, the life giver, meeting death in bathing in the blood of Black Hair. It's the symbolism that's really striking in this film, you know? It's got layers, like a sexy onion. Cut to Nielsen as he walks into the station, once again being a whingy. He's given the positive IDs of the first 4 victims and recognises the names as being relatives of people who helped put Kemper in prison. Cut to Nielsen in bed having a nightmare, and cut to me suddenly having flashbacks of subconscious cruelty. He sees Kemper, who smashes his teeth out with a chisel when he's woken up by the phone. He answers, and we cut to the man placing a coin into Black Hair's eye as she lays dead next to Blonde Hair and the old man. The phone goes dead and we cut to Nielsen attending the scene. He's shown the coin and we cut back to Kemper, and then back to the man in his lair with a kitty cat. Oh no. Holds the cat up above an altar. No. Grabs a knife and brutally kills the cat. I'm officially not rooting for this guy anymore. F this dude. He guts the poor little smidge and drops her innards onto a plate and then swallows it all in one gulp. Cut to the station where the chief informs Nielsen that the fingerprint found on the coin was Kemper's and mentions he's spoken to Dr. Ross, to which Nielsen replies,
Dr. Ross is a stupid sir.
I'm not even being sarcastic at this point. I genuinely adore the dialogue in this film. Nielsen then begins to detail Kemper's backstory as we cut between that and Kemper himself being moved to a new cell with a mask that covers his eyes. Nielsen explains that Kemper was a hypnotist who would brainwash kids at his shows, then later kidnap and eat them over a 25-year period. All of this was to try and imitate his father, the famous 1930s Satanist Anthony Crawley. Nielsen requests that he talk to Kemper and promises he'll get some answers. Cut to outside a new address as the man stands having a cigarette. A couple leaves the house, and then we cut to them driving around the city, blatantly doing cocaine in a convertible. Living the dream, I guess? Cut to a homeless guy being messed with by a couple of mad lads. They throw the beer into the road, and when he goes to retrieve it, the cokehead couple run him down.
Jesus!
The woman tells the man to go and check, but instead of checking the man that they run over, they check the car and see that it's fine, then speed off. Comedy? Cut to them at home where everything gets a bit porny. That is until Nick is unable to perform. It's revealed that he only has one leg, and this is the reason why he doesn't think he can satisfy his wife, I guess. Nick goes to the doctor and is told that he can do a transplant, but only if he has the spare leg. I think we can all see where this is going from here. Nick makes a call to an old friend and arranges to meet him, then heads out to the place, gun in hand. His sketchy mate answers, and after some convincing lets Nick in, who then promptly shoots him in the face and robs his leg. I want your f***ing leg.
No.
A few moments later.
He then takes the leg to the doctor and forces him to attach it. Cut to Nick at home when his partner returns and is shocked to find her beau once again bipedal. After some talk, they go to bed where Nick has a nightmare of his partner being murdered. He then awakens with horrible pain in his leg, which his partner is able to cure with an injection. Cut to a wonderfully cheesy rehabilitation montage, then cut to the couple going out for another cocaine drive. Suddenly, the new leg takes control and causes the car to crash, killing the wife, much to Nick's disappointment. Later, police arrive at the scene. One of the officers looks inside the car to find Nick brutally stabbing his evil leg and screaming it won't die.
It won't die! Oh, Jesus!
As that cop goes to vomit, the man appears, stabbing the other cop in the eyes and then killing the vomiting one off screen. Cut to the asylum when one of the workers finds Kemper's notes, and then to the crash site as Nilsson investigates. He's advised of the list of names in Kemper's cell and that his name is next. Cut to an office where we meet Richard. A co-worker confirms that they're going out on a date that night before his boss Mr. Pringle comes over and gives him shit for accessing some rather disturbing material on his work computer. But Richard just says he's compiling a report and tells him to get to in so many words. When the colleague asks where they're going that night, he sees a vision of her tied up. They decide where they're going, and she leaves as Richard gets back on his computer and starts looking at gore sites. He finds one called the Sick Room, where it seems to show people being murdered for real. He's booted off the site, but notes down the URL, and we cut to the date that evening, then back at Richard's place as they enter drunk. He tells her to go upstairs and creepily watches her as she does before we cut to the office, where the other workers discuss the fact that she hasn't returned to work in 3 days, and the last time she was seen, she was talking about going on the date with Richard. The same woman goes to the house to check and finds that the colleague has been badly beaten and doesn't want to ever come back to work. At the office, Richard continues down the snuff rabbit hole and gets more and more combative with his boss. Eventually, after a few different confrontations, Richard is fired.
You are so fired.
But by this point, he doesn't care. He's so addicted to the violence, he just needs more. His surrounding life and everything in it be damned.
Shove it up your ass! Don't be ridiculous, Richard, you know.
Cut to Richard at home as he once again tries to get into the sick room site. He's able to access it and pays to have a man stabbed and slashed with a knife. Before being booted again and going into full crackhead mode.
What the f***?
We then see a montage of him losing everything as his addiction to violence completely takes over. A little while later, Richard is homeless and going to an internet cafe to get his fix. On that day's visit, he receives an email with an address and a promise that a man there can tell him more. He gets to the farmhouse and is greeted by a man who really can't answer any of his questions, but does advise that all the answers he seeks are down there. In the back. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. He heads into the darkness, eventually finding himself in, you guessed it, the sick room where he's brutally murdered. Cut to the police station as Nilsson enters and is told of Richard's death, and we're informed that he was Nilsson's son. Cut to Kemper laughing in his cell, and then to a mutated man walking down a dark corridor with an axe, presumably preparing to ask somebody a question. We pan out to reveal that this is a movie being watched by one of the asylum workers. The doorbell rings and she sees it's a police officer, so lets him in. When no one comes to the desk, she goes to investigate, but the man appears out of thin air behind her and twists her head round 180 degrees. If he could just appear out of thin air, why did he need to come through the front door? Small tiny quibbles in a masterpiece. Cut to Nilsson as he grabs a gun and tells the chief he's gonna kill Kemper. Chief tells him he can't let him do that, leading to this.
I know. I won't ask.
Cradle of Fear is a movie that just keeps on giving. Cut to Nilsson arriving at the asylum, thirsty for Kemper's blood. He draws a gun on the matron and forces her to take him to Kemper. Inside the cell, the two-man trade barbs, with Nilsson shooting Kemper in the leg and the matron calling for security. Kemper continues to chat the usual I am the devil stuff, announcing that you can't kill evil, while Nilsson pops shots into him. Security then arrive, grabbing Nilsson and knocking his gun away. Nilsson begs that they let him finish Kemper off, when we see one of the guards standing back suspiciously. Then we see his eyes and shit hits the fan. Chaos be thy name. Once all the guards are dead, the man unlocks Kemper's mask and it's revealed that he is Kemper's son. They are reunited when suddenly the man's head explodes from a gunshot. Kemper screams as Nilsson gloats and then shoots Kemper, finally killing him. Nilsson then goes to check one last time to make sure he's dead, when the man springs back to life despite not having the top half of his head. Nilsson begins to scream and let off shots at the monster as we cut outside and fade to black. The end. Holy mother of God, I love this movie. Cradle of Fear is a joyous little piece of art that, while terrible in almost every way, has clearly been made with love and passion. I get the vibe that these were just a bunch of mates who made music together that wanted to make a horror flick and had the most fun doing it. The stories aren't original at all, but they're told in such a unique way that you can't help but feel overwhelming affection for the production. Well, at least I can't anyway. Clearly no one involved is a professional actor, or at least weren't at the time, and some of the line readings are indescribably bad, but they all go above and beyond in terms of dedication to the gig, and that's commendable to say the least. I don't have a clue what's going on with the sound design either. For the most part, it's punctuated with these cartoon sound effects that don't match the tone of the scene, but are just another ingredient in this film that make me love it. The gore is completely over the top and shocking, with the standout moment in the film being when the girl tries to stab the belly monster to death inside her stomach. That scene is just glorious. Look, it's clearly a terrible movie from a technical standpoint, but for all the reasons that I just mentioned, it's leapt straight into my top 10 favourite horror movies of all time, and I don't see it getting moved out of there anytime soon. So that was my review of Cradle of Fear. Did you die a little bit inside? Let me know in the comments below. But in the meantime, as always, like, share, subscribe. My name is Jonjo Lyons. Stay frosty.